To welcome everyone to today's Committee of the Whole. We have 5 items on the agenda. The first one is going to be the Forge. So this could be a little bit lengthy today. We'll have audience participation and then wrap it up with an executive session. But to start, I scanned through it. Looks like all the trustees are here. With that being said, we're going to go to the first item, which is the Forge. George, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And real quick, and I know we've been through this a bunch of times, real quick housekeeping. Again, the mayor mentioned 5 different items here tonight. Again, opportunity to participate before the meeting. We did not receive anything. You can participate at the meeting by watching it live if you've registered, and then you can also watch it on our YouTube page. And then after the meeting, we'll put it onto our agenda center. Before we get started on the agenda, again, I mentioned the written comments. There is one section on the agenda. We have 5 items where there's petitioners and other people who want to participate. So we'll do that during the meeting. But if you have anything for the board that's not on the agenda or just for general public comment, you can do that during the public comment section of the meeting. And again, we'll use throughout the meeting, we'll try our best to use the raise your hand feature on Zoom, manage participants, and then raise your hand so I know who you are, and then I will unmute you and let you speak. Try to keep yourself muted. I will do that throughout the meeting if I hear anything, but don't take offense, just trying to keep it calm and quiet here. So the first item, I just wanted to, the Forge at Lamont Quarries update and outstanding items discussion. Definitely have a lot of information to get through tonight. I just want to give a quick overview, the quick agenda of the items I want to go through, and then I'll turn it over to the Forge, and then I'll have some other issues as well from police chief and others who have comment. Just to wrap up again, the village has been working with the Forge for the last several years now. Amazing how time flies. If you go back, trying to find a way to bring people to town, drive revenues into town, but also for an opportunity to maintain the vast acreage that we have in the quarry area. So actually we've gotten a lot done. I know we have some issues that we have to kind of work out here tonight, but it's amazing when you line it up on everything we've gotten done. Temporary easements were approved back in November of 17. This included some project planning items and even working with the Forge on working with a resident that was actually located on village property to relocate safely and some other coordination items. And then master license agreements were approved in June of 2019 between the village and the Forge. I'll go through that a little bit to just the utilization of village property for the project. And zoning changes also in June of 19 for phase 1 and final PUD for phase 1, and then preliminary PUD for phase 2. Intergovernmental agreement between the village and the township. I'll go through that as well. That was approved in June. And then just recently, some actual hard improvements we've had in the quarry area, the improvements to the road via our license agreement, approved that contract, and the Forge is reimbursing the village for that work. And then also for the latest improvement, the pedestrian bridge over the I&M Canal, which you can go visit. It's already out there. And so that's the latest item that was formally approved by the board, although we've had a lot of meetings in between with staff and a couple elected officials at a time. Just to recap again, the license agreements I mentioned, it has 2 different designations, essentially exclusive use property. The village owns property on both sides of the I&M Canal, 90-foot reserve strip. The south side generally is exclusive use property for the Forge. The north side is generally passive use property. So you'll still see residents, visitors come out and fish and hike and walk, bike. They're still able to do that on the north side. Again, if you further east, similar, just passive uses and exclusive use property. And then also, I don't have the full agreement for the board here tonight, but the township also is a contributor to this overall public-private partnership, and township-owned land. There's a similar license agreement that designates land that the township is allowing the Forge to utilize for its operations. And then when you put it all together, again, a lot happening on this page. I'm sure you guys have seen it, but There's a lot of property, the village owns property, the township, MWRD also owns property, which the village has a leasehold in these areas. So just a vast amount of acreage, and again, with the goal of having an entity come in, program it, provide maintenance support, so that we can utilize it for its greatest potential. When you put it all together, here's, before I turn it over to the forge, just an overall site plan. Not a whole lot has changed from the actual activities in this picture, but I'm sure the forge will go through and give a brief update as well. Before I turn it on over, just want to go through the items that I want to try to get through tonight, with everything else on our agenda too. Just an overall update from the forge on where the project is, talk about their fencing and security plans, and that'll lead into Chief Mayton's comments. The police department has reviewed it, and I've been working with the forge, the mayor, but I want to make sure the rest of the board is aware of some of the comments that Chief Mayton has, to make sure this thing operates safely. I put a star next to the liquor license. That is one item we actually have to try to move along so that the forge can open when they would like to, and so that'll all be discussed tonight, and then also approved at a future meeting. And then also touch on the traffic flow. I know we've had questions from board members and the public of how the traffic is going to work. We'll touch on that. Couple things that also have to move forward: the parking lot, which I'll go through. There's a contract pending that we'll need to have the board approve at some point here soon, so that the project can continue. I want to talk about maintenance obligations, and then other projects to be considered. And again, we're not going to solve everything tonight, but if there's anything that's outstanding that I could put on a list for a future meeting or for future discussion, that is what we will try to do tonight. So I'll go through that after we've been through some of the other updates. With that, I don't know, Jeanette or Bart or
Hey, George,
yeah.
real quick. Before I turn it over to the forge, just want to reiterate, that this is a partnership between, private and public, and public, not only the village, but the township as well. We appreciate their involvement. They have land in this. The village obviously does as well. There was, the intention, and it's not only the intention, but it will actually play out this way, is that this land will always be open to the residents for the passive activities. We know in the short term here, there's been some inconveniences during construction. We will continue to work through these issues, and that's what this meeting is about. We want to make sure that this land continues to stay open to the residents, which it will. Again, the gist of the agreement was the forge gets accessibility and signs a lease for the property of the village and the township. We can talk on behalf of the village, and in return, we basically get maintenance. We get, further paths on the north side. This is a perfect type of partnership, because the village should not be in the recreation business. We don't have the resources to do it, and we just cannot maintain it. So for us to have this land and to be able to lease it and continue to get the same use out of it and maintenance, that's what this is about. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the forge, and we can go from there.
Jeremy, you want to give an update to get this going?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for the time here to chat about where we are. So over the course of the last couple of months now, we've really been laser focused on a handful of pretty critical items, both related to the actual operations of the park itself, and obviously related to the construction of the park and our relationship with the community as part of that. So just really briefly, we've been aggressively hiring our team over the course of the last several months, beginning in November, hiring not only a general manager for the park, but a whole seasoned team of folks from industry that have been with us now for quite some time, and our full-time and mostly full-time, partially part-time team is now at 16 people, and we'll be adding another 60 people to the staffing roles over the course of the next 8 weeks. So as we ramp up and get ready to launch. So we're really excited about where we are, and we have a fantastic team in place and a lot of interest from other people, both directly here locally, as well as the community surrounding us, to come in and actually be part of this park as an employee of the business. So we're really happy to be where we are. From a construction standpoint, I think a lot of people on this call probably know, we were actually miraculously, for a construction project, up until 10 weeks ago or so, we were actually ahead of schedule, and we're looking to open the park on May 25th. Obviously, the world changed pretty dramatically for everybody going into March, and our schedule has shifted around quite a bit as a result of that. Instead of opening on May 25th, obviously, heck, we couldn't open on May 25th, even if we were ready, given the Restore Illinois plans. But our construction timeline has pushed a bit, but we're still working aggressively, and we have been working throughout the entire COVID-19 pandemic, working toward a July open. So again, we're super excited to be where we are. If you've not been down to the quarries lately, we've all kinds of cool photos we can show you of how much progress we've made, both on the active side as well as the passive side, the south side and the north side of the canal down there. But we still have a lot of work to do. We're at that phase of the construction project now, though, where we're close enough to the end that things are happening really, really quickly. From week to week, massive changes are happening down there. And as a result of the quick rate of change toward the end of a construction project, it can feel discombobulated as an outsider looking in. I know, and as George mentioned a moment or two ago, there have been a few incidents and inconveniences, I guess I would say, associated with some of the construction project as it's continued to progress. Those inconveniences are quickly being dealt with and addressed as we finalize the construction process here over the course of the next 45 days or so. So again, we're super excited to be there. And then from an operational standpoint, we had sort of built an entire operations plan based on a May 25th or a July 1st opening pre-COVID. And the team has spent a large amount of their time over the course of the last 8 weeks reworking our operations plan for the post, or for the mid to post COVID-19 era that we now find ourselves in. And what that really means is that we've gone through and we've rewritten the whole plan for everything from how people will be able to access the park, which of our activities and things will be open day 1 versus day 90 versus day 366, and how and when and where we'll be able to address people's needs and safety as we bring them into the park. So we're really excited about those plans. And rather than walk through all that tonight, I guess I would say the best place to go to get some information about our Restore Illinois based operations plan is actually our website. If you go to forgeparks.com, you can check out not only a bunch of the activities that will be available day 1, and there'll be more content coming out actually over the course of this week as we're now getting ready to start the sales and booking process. But you can also find information about our COVID-19 operations plan, as well as the measures that we're taking to ensure the safety of our staff, as well as the safety of the community. So that's sort of a general update. Now, there are some very specific things that George and the mayor wanted us to talk about today related to fencing and security. I know there's some questions there, and we'll talk about those things. I'm going to push pause there for a second and just ask Jeanette and Bart if there's anything that they want to cover as it relates to the generic and general update before we dig into the specifics.
I just to highlight some of the things you said. The construction zone nature of the area right now, plus the warmer weather, plus a lot of people being at home, plus the general interest people have in the towers that are going up, have made it so that there are a lot of people down there, some milling around and some with the trucks, and so there have been challenges. I think we've had a couple of incidences of tool theft and things like that, which are unfortunate, but we're working to resolve those sorts of things. So just to echo what Jeremy said, it's right now is an interesting time with all the activity and all the people and all the interest, and so we're pretty close to being through this phase, and it'll be a distant memory sometime fairly soon.
Exactly. So I guess then jumping into the weeds a little bit, George, and you can tell me if you want me to cover something different, but it might make sense to talk a bit about the updated fencing and security plan at this point and how that's coming together.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. All right. So over the course of the last, really, I guess since August of last year, when we officially began the construction process after receiving the final votes on the licensing situation for the land and use thereof, we've been working with not only our construction teams and our project management crews, but also with our insurance providers as we like step by step as we've been building out the plan. Now that has led to a couple of different changes that have been honestly necessitated by industry and insurance requirements. And one of those is related to the fencing plan and the security plan that we have to roll out for this for the park. So what you see on the screen here is the plan that's been approved not only by insurance, but it's also been discussed at length with the village and with the Lamont Police Department for where gates will be and fences will be to ensure that again the village residents can be safe while the park's open and also while the park is closed. So I'll start at the far west side just quickly, down by Olin or KA Steel at the southwest edge of Consumers Quarry there. So we will be erecting a new 20-foot galvanized double swing steel vehicular barrier gate there. In fact, that gate goes in over the course of the next few weeks. It will be in. And what that means is that we will be officially helping to enforce the dusk to dawn, or dawn to dusk, excuse me, policy that has always been in place with the village and the township as it relates to the access to the Heritage Quarries recreation area. So what that means is that every morning at dawn, we will be opening up that gate. And every night at dusk, we will be doing a full security sweep of the entire quarries area and escorting people out of the park and locking that gate to restrict vehicular access to the north side of the park. We're doing the same thing on the south side. There's an existing gate, as you recall, next to the gazebo area. There's a real good chance that that gate will also be moved to the south, to the far west edge of the south side parking lot there as well. Again, for continuity's sake across both, but we'll be in.
And Jeremy, just to interject, we do want the village's thoughts on that. The moving that the south side gate to be even with the one on the north side versus leaving it at the gazebo. We can do it either way, but for continuity and security, it seems like moving it to be even with the one on the north is a good idea. But if everybody doesn't think that's a good idea, we're happy to refrain from that.
Yeah, exactly. And keep it where it's at. Yeah, 100%.
And Jeremy, this is the exhibit I have. Sorry to jump in.
No, it's fine.
Is that the what you'll be putting in, what you're proposing then?
Yeah, so these are the fence structures that will be put in, not the gates themselves. The galvanized steel gates. If you think about the vehicular gate that currently sits on the south side by the gazebo, right? That one, it's the same style gate. So it's not like a wall, or but it is that sort of swing gate system that will close and lock in the middle, just like the one that's already there on the south side. What you're seeing here is the fencing system that we'll be putting in. So if we didn't want to put up chain link fences and things that look sort of, gross. We wanted to put stuff up that is reflective of the site and the space, and that will be beautiful and people will appreciate, but that also meet the requirements of insurance providers and that fit into our overarching security plan with our security cameras and things like that. So we're putting in these fencing system. What you'll notice here, if we look at just go up a bit east from the existing gate where the gazebo is, right to those double X's where the red line starts. Yeah, so we're putting, if you go down to the quarries today, you'll note there is a construction fence right there at Icebox Quarry where where Icebox Quarry sort of ends, and the area where the adventure course will actually be. So we will be rebuilding the existing construction fence there at that junction point to create the west side gate or access point to the park from there. That gate will also, just like the vehicular gates at the far west side, be open it'll be open when we're open, and it will close when we are closed. If you go further east on that, following the red line there along the trail to the existing footbridge where George's cursor is now, you may have noticed we've gone in and there's construction fencing now on the north side of that bridge, but we've just installed a gate, a swinging locking gate system on the south side of that bridge, which again will be closed during non-business hours, non-operational hours for the adventure park. If you go further east, where we just dropped in the brand new vehicular and pedestrian bridge there, vehicular for emergency access, but pedestrian bridge there at the main entrance of the east side of the active zone of the park. That fence, that bridge is also fenced on its south side with a locking gate mechanism. And then at the far east end of the park, next to the point right where West Side Machines property butts up against the reserve strip of the village and the area under license agreement to the Forge, we're putting in, we put in construction fencing there now, which you can see, but we'll be putting in the same sort of fencing system that we'll have at the far west end of the park as well. And that will again be locked during non-business hours. And then the last point of gates, and then we'll talk about security cameras for a moment, is on the south side of the park where Walker Road will someday extend into the park, right, where those double X's are, that we have a construction and employee access point there today that's currently fenced. We'll also keep that area locked down with the same sort of galvanized steel double swing gate system that we're putting on the far west side of the park. That east side of the park, it's not for public access. It's only for employee and delivery stuff. So it's not even open to the public, and the public will never go into the park via that gate, but we're putting in the same gate structures again for the safety and health and well-being of our own staff. So that's the major sort of fencing system for the park itself on the active south side. There is one more section of fence that we're putting up as part of the construction project that also goes up over the course of the next couple of weeks. And it's actually, it's a piece of fence that we were asked to put in by Ozinga, who has control of, via a lease agreement or a license agreement rather, of Consumers Quarry. And where George's cursor is, if you go out of the quarries today, you'll know, there's a pathway that's been cut by people over time that gives you clear access to everything on the northwest edge of Consumers Quarry there. And that's where a lot of young adults go, and they jump off the cliffs into the water, and they play and they drink and they make a huge mess. And no one should be down there. It's actually unsafe, and it's not a place that people should be. And so we are putting up a 6-foot chain link fence there with a gate that is an agreement with KA Steel that will actually block that entrance to Ozinga's licensed land, and that will go up very soon. So the intent of that particular gate is to block it off. Neither KA Steel nor Ozinga want people trespassing on that part of the property, nor have they for some time. So we're erecting a permanent fence there to help to keep people from going back there and ultimately keep them safe. So in conjunction with our fencing plan, as part of our security plan, we're also putting in a series of cameras throughout the park, and cameras that will be visible, as well as a handful of cameras that won't be visible to the public. But at every entry point to the park, so that's both of the gates on the far west side, on the north side and the south side vehicular access points, as well as every gate at which patrons can come into the park, or even where our staff can come into the park via that private far east, southeast entry point, we'll have security cameras that run 24/7, infrared, voice and light activated, and everything else. And they'll be running at all times to monitor, who is coming in and who's going out of the park, obviously, particularly at night. The hope and the idea is that with the vehicular access being blocked per village ordinance from dusk until dawn, that will help to keep people out of, at least vehicles out of the park during night hours, which we think and hope will eliminate, if not certainly greatly reduce the number of times that people are in the quarries area after the village ordinance time of dusk. So we'll be putting those systems in place. And the last thing we're doing from an infrastructure perspective as it relates to fencing and gating and cameras down there is actually we've installed a whole series of lights now that run the entire length of that red line, more or less, along the the power lines, the ComEd power lines that run the length of the I&M canal there. At this point, all the lights that are to the east of the new bridge are on and active. You can see them at night, and it lights up a big portion of the area. Very soon, everything from the west of the new bridge down will also be lit at night, and those go on. They stay on all night long. In addition to that lighting, we're also putting in solar-powered lights in the new parking lots and a couple other areas throughout the park. And from a lighting perspective, which plays right into our security plan, we're also uplighting many of the tower systems that are part of the 8-tower adventure in the aerial course zone. So those will be lit during business hours at night, and then they'll be lit, for periods of time during the evenings as well. The idea is to keep the place lit so that people are not encouraged to go there and mess around at night. And the last comment I'll make, I apologize, I've been talking quite a bit here as it relates to security planning and fencing in the park itself, is we are also erecting small fences. Now, they're not meant to keep you from climbing over them. They're literally, 1.5 feet, 2 feet high fences with chain around them with signage that says, do not enter this point, around all of the tower structure, the 3 main tower structures. So the skyscraper tower and the 2 X towers that are, 90 to 120 feet tall. Those also will have mini gates around them, that the purpose there being to remind guests that might trespass into the park in non-business hours that, hey, this is not something you should be climbing on. It's not a toy. You shouldn't be here. Crossing this line is not a good idea. Don't, for your own safety and health, do not get on this attraction. All right, that's a lot of words out of my mouth. I'm going to push pause for a minute.
Thanks, Jeremy. I don't know if anyone has any questions now. I was going to lead into the chief, but anybody have any questions on the initial plan, or we can go through with the chief's discussion of it?
Hey, Jeremy, just so everyone understands, can you just again restate where is that fencing going and from where to where?
Yeah, sure, you bet. So the fencing itself, there's not a ton of it, which is a good thing. The fencing itself is going, if you look at this diagram on the left hand or the west side of the park, where go a little bit further west there, George, to the first double, yep, right there. No, a little bit back, the yellow ones, yeah, right there. So there will be fencing there. And again, that's this, the wood and steel chain link, nice looking fence system with gates, with swinging gates at that point. And then on the far east side of the park by West Side Machine, where the other small series of little yellow X's is, that's also where there'll be fences. And so those fences will be shut and locked when the park is not open. And the vehicular access gates will be opened from dawn to dusk.
So, Joe, the existing gate, the white, just to the west there, that's to remain also. Is that correct? Is there a reason? Is there a reason that that pathway's been blocked off?
Well, so that existing gate is a vehicular gate, and so like that one that's already there, that's to keep cars and trucks from driving down the access path, the quarry trail there. The reason that for the yellow gates is that insurance requires that when our staff is not working, when the park is not open, that we have to block off the main accessible routes into the park. And so those gates need to go in to basically to fulfill the requirements of our insurance carriers.
It's a physical barrier requirement. And trustee, for the gate by the gazebo, as we said before, that can either stay or be moved farther west to be even with the new double X right there where George has the cursor. So we can either leave it where it is, or we can move it down farther to make it across from the other gate.
And just to reiterate, Bart, that gate is there so that cars can continue to go up to the gazebo and park there, but we don't want cars going east of there. So we need some sort of barrier, right, to stop that from happening?
Yeah, that's why that's there today, yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So is that what we originally agreed on? I'm just curious, as far as, like, I always thought we could go from the gazebo, bikers can go along that path along the gazebo and cross the first bridge and then cross the canal. Is that's not the case anymore, right?
So when none of our staff is there, that's true. There will be a physical barrier when none of our staff people are there. When our staff is there, which will be an hour or so before we open, that gate will be opened and bikers and everybody can use it at their leisure. So, so there may be from dawn till say 9 or so in the morning where that's blocked off, different than it would have been otherwise, but it is a very short period of time where that will be blocked.
And one point of clarification, it's more likely than not, our staff will be there considerably before 9. So as of now, it looks like our main operating hours will be sort of 10 to 8 on most days, sometimes later than that. But our staff, based on the size and scope of the adventure tower structure itself, the adventure course, it takes us a good 2 to 2.5 hours to pre-clear it every morning before we can open it, which means we'll have staff members there pretty early in the day. Our schedule will be a bit in flux, right? Because during peak season and peak hours, where there's the most demand, we'll open up earlier. And when in the winter months, when there's less demand, both for public and for active and passive recreation, it'll probably stay closed longer. But as everyone, at the end of the day, like there's not a lot of traffic on those paths, in the shoulder and winter months, and so that shouldn't be an issue. The biggest time we're a little concerned for even for us as residents is those super early mornings in the summer when the access will be the north side versus the south side. Now to that end, and maybe I should have mentioned this, we did put in the first phase of a new pedestrian path, there's the word, on the north side of the canal. So that runs right alongside the existing roadway, but is separated by a row of trees and some berms and things like that. We put that trail in so that guests to the passive and even the active side of the park who are on bikes or who are walking or running have another way to get up get into the passive parts of the park on the north side without having to contend with traffic. The vehicular traffic. That trail, for what it's worth, that we started, now it runs from the entry point there where that double swing gate will be at Olin Steele's property, all the way up to the new parking areas where we're putting in those 2 new parking spaces. But before we open, it will actually extend all the way down to the 3rd bridge at the Lamont Waterfall. So what you'll then have at opening day is a full pedestrian path that crosses the street in, I guess, 2 locations, but that will run the entire length from the Olin Steele entrance all the way to the bridge at the waterfall. It will allow pedestrians to stay off of the road. So that's which is part of the plan from day one. But we're excited that that'll be there for people to help keep us safe.
Jeremy, are you keeping the crushed limestone beyond that, or are you converting all of it to mulch?
Yeah, no. So great question, Dave. So we did mulch on the north side to start because it honestly for expediency's sake, as we're trying to ensure that people are safe as they're accessing it now. Our goal over time, of course, is to continue to add and improve on both the paths that we're creating now, but also the paths that exist. And using the crushed limestone is absolutely the intent, particularly over time. The more trails we build, we want them to be accessible again for runners, for bikers, and for walkers, and to be as comfortable as possible. So we'll always be adding to and improving those trail systems.
Trustee Snagowski had a question. He was raising his hand.
Yes, actually, question and comment. I'm trying to address Ken's question, I guess, and my understanding. So the red gate on the west end down by Owen there, that gate will open at dawn. So the north path will be open at dawn.
Yes.
And then the gate at where the red highlighted line is on the south side will open at approximately 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock when the park is open. So the north path is open dawn to dusk, and the south path is open and closed as the park is open and closed. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. And the park pretty much closes at dusk
Right.
For all intents and purposes. Yeah. So, and actually the park will close later than dusk most of the summer. And so obviously we'll shut the north side as the park closes down, and we do our security sweeps to ensure that everyone that has been in the park playing is gone and the vehicles are out of the parking lots and everyone's gone home.
Okay.
And I had another hand here. Hold on. Was you? Ron, Trustee Stapleton.
I've got a question. The roadway on the north side of the canal, I was down there yesterday. There had to be about 1,000 potholes. I was just wondering, what kind of surface are you going to put on it?
We can let Jeanette answer that in more detail, but obviously with all the construction traffic, it's getting pretty tore up. But there's no sense fixing it now when we have 45 more days of construction traffic. So once the heavy use of that is done, we will be bringing it back, and Jeanette can talk to you about how what the fill is going to be with the topping and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm unmuted or not.
We can hear you.
You're on.
Okay. Basically, we're going to be using the same materials that have been used over the course of time. Like Bart had indicated, the potholes are there because, we went through a winter. We wanted to wait and get through the rest of the construction and then grade and top off that road with fresh grindings so that it'll be a lot better. It'll be more like when Public Works had spread the grindings on that road and it was nice and smooth. And we'll continue to maintain it in that fashion.
Okay.
We'll put all that together. We'll talk a little bit about the trails in the parking lot too, but any question on the fencing, we can talk about it later, but I did want to turn it over to Chief Mayton and kind of related to fencing and security, if you guys wouldn't mind. Chief, do you want to go through just some comments you've had, and I can bring up your comments from the packet, but and also I didn't want to invite not that I didn't want to invite the fire department, but I want to make it speedy here tonight. If you have any comments on their emergency management requests as well.
And George, I had a couple questions of Jeremy before I start that discussion that just may help inform my discussion. Jeremy, on the lighting, so your lighting is going to be installed along that gate on the north side of your property, and will those be floodlights? So they will all be pointed south then?
So those, so the lights that are on that south side I&M Canal Path there, actually most of them are already in, but they're like, I guess I would call them they're sort of like traditional street lights. So they flood the area straight down and around them, but they don't flood or shed light north of the canal. So they're turned toward and facing down over the south side pathway and illuminating the path for safety purposes and casting their light sort of into the south side, the active zones. They don't push any real substantial light over to the north.
Will there be any lights at the base of the towers shining up to the top of the towers?
Yes, there will be. So each of the three large towers, the 2X towers and the skyscraper tower, are underlit, and actually with big, pretty bright lights, which we can flash in a million colors, and there are all kinds of crazy cool things. We also have top lights that'll be across all of the hex towers. So the ropes course, the adventure course it's called the 8 Towers Adventure because it's 8 different tower structures. The three really tall ones, they're uplit from the bottom. The 5 hex towers that are interspersed throughout the adventure park on the west side there of Forge Court between Icebox, those are lit from above via a series of string lights. Those are not meant to be super, super bright, but they certainly will illuminate the course itself. But again, they're meant to sort of illuminate the general paths in the area around the adventure towers and the adventure course. They don't cast light north of the quarry, north of the canal.
And the 6 interior cameras that are motion detected that are inside, are any of those movable or controllable that you can point up into the towers if you think somebody went up into one of your towers?
They are not, though we are considering placing another camera or two in the towers themselves. As of right now, we don't have them slated for installation on the towers, but that's something we're considering.
And the 6 have overlapping fields of view, so if somebody moved from one to the other, didn't trigger, you had some control of moving the cameras to search.
So the 6, so no, they're not movable that way, because they're, this is a solar powered camera system versus a hardwired camera system. So the mobility of the actual units is limited in that regard. We don't have like joystick control from a control center.
So the field of view is fixed.
Yes, exactly. The field of view is fixed. And so we see people, the field of view is quite good. I can send you, sample photos, for example, of the cameras we've had there all throughout. It's the same stuff. But yeah, the field of view is definitely fixed. Though it does, because we positioned the cameras at each of the entry points, if people move from, the west side over to the east side, of the Forge Quarry, we would see them moving their way across the park. What we wouldn't see is if someone, say, jumped over the bridge at the main parking lot on this diagram, that parking lot number 1 there over the existing bridge. We'd see them jump the bridge. You'd see them on the camera system there, and if they took off toward the adventure course and then scrambled their way up and over or through one of those mini ponds or whatever and made their way over the train tracks, we probably wouldn't see them exit on that side, but you'd see them if they moved their way any further east or if they exited the park to the west.
Okay. Those were the questions I had, George, and if you want, we can start in then to the cow memo that had the request that I had.
Yeah, if you could, Chief, and I'll pull up your sheet so people can
Hey,
see
George.
it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand, so I just had to say something. And just because we're going off of the fencing, I just didn't I probably should make my comment here real quick. On the fencing, I know this is an objection. I just want to kind of get it out on the record that from my perspective, can we go back to the fencing view?
Yeah.
I see a security risk for the pedestrians going on the north side for the Consumers Quarry. The mulch trail that's there is 6 foot wide with trees right along the border there. So to say that we're going to have bikers, runners, and walkers on that trail, I think is a security risk. I would like to see us allow access on the south side. I know that you don't want people in front of your property, which you could potentially fence, but there's also an option of putting in another bridge on the south side to get to a safe portion of the trail before it gets to that fence. So I think there's other options. I just think we have a safety risk because when the park is closed, the only access point is on the north side, and the mulch trails are in my opinion, not sufficient for a standard bike trail with multi-use for biking, running, and pedestrian walking. So.
And to respond to the comment in the way that we've responded to it when we've heard it before, this is a limited time period where we will have this trail being the only trail that can be used. So it's from dawn until somebody comes along at 8 or 9. And so we're keeping our eyes open. We're cognizant of the concern. And as things go, if it becomes a problem or becomes an issue, we will address it and to the best of our ability. But for now, this is a reasonable solution. It's a reasonable accommodation, and it's for a very short period of time where that's the only pedestrian and bicycle access. So we think we've done the best job we can at making separating the vehicular traffic from the pedestrian traffic. And again, it's just for a short period of time in the mornings.
And then my other second one is the safety on the south side of the park along the tracks. Since there's no fencing there, I know we're putting some brush in there, but I feel like that's a safety concern there as well with access to the park by just going over the tracks, walking down the tracks and going over the tracks. So I know that's another thing we addressed. It's not something you're looking to do. I just wanted to make sure it was on the record in this meeting. So
Yeah, and we appreciate that comment as well. And there are a variety of reasons that there wouldn't be fencing there. One, it's physically impossible in certain locations. Two, that it's not different than as things exist today, right? So people can still go through there, and they shouldn't. People can still trespass, and they shouldn't. But it's with our presence there more, we hope that will be a greatly reduced issue.
And Trustee McClafferty, did you have your hand up, or is that from before?
Yeah, I just regarding the, you said you have a security detail that'll be sweeping the north side at dusk. Now, I'm sure you'll have events there in maybe summertime in the evenings. You might have some events going on there. Is that that's not something that the chief has to worry about, getting phone calls, having to clear the north side, or people aren't leaving, or do you anticipate any problems with that, or?
We hope not. We have full-time, we have our staff that will be taking people through. Obviously, if someone is obstinate and creating a problem, then they'll be just like any other time. There may be a call, but we hope that it will be no issue. We hope that and trust that we will have sufficient, we have plenty of people there. So we don't anticipate problems, but we'll address that as we go.
Yeah, and the second point was actually today's point. With that wood chip path that it's a nice path. It looks good. I don't know how it fared after last night's rain, but I think maybe long term it'd be nice to see if it was something a little more permanent, so that
we acknowledge that.
Yeah,
we'll continue improving it over time.
No, that's. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think Ken and Dave, it's not just trustees. I think we heard this at the Heritage Corridor and Outdoor Recreation Commission meeting, and you guys talked it through with them. And there's going to be impacts from the development or changes that have to happen. And I think this is a good meeting just to kind of talk about them. And if there's ways long term you can mitigate them, make improvements, if it's a bridge or if it's a crushed gravel, I think long term there's a way to mitigate them further. But today we'll just kind of get the chief's comments. If there's additional security cameras to mitigate some of the concerns that Trustee Maher had, let's gather those up and kind of talk about them. So without anything further, I think we're going to bring it up later with the maintenance side of it. Chief, maybe if you want to kind of go through your items.
Sure. In the packet, there's a memo that I had sent to George that included that from an ideal security standpoint, there were things that my staff thought would be recommended to include in their security plan. The primary, and I guess the top request that we would have would be the hiring of an overnight security officer. I know in phone calls or meetings that we've had leading up to that, that is not their initial intent to do. They have some other proposals instead of hiring that security officer. But I think having a security officer overnight, at least initially, solves a lot of issues for them. Before you have a lot of the interested or the curious folks that are going to try to take a look at it early on, if you had a security officer, at least in the first part of the summertime, I think that would prevent a lot of that initially, and you get the word out that there's somebody there, that it's not easy to get into the park. I think that security officer also helps with all of your issues with opening and closing the gates. It would help the issues with your sweeps. I want to talk a little bit about the sweeps, I guess, after my discussion, but somebody that's in uniform and has training, I think it'll be easier for them to sweep and move out obstinate folks from there, especially if you have empty cars where you can't figure out exactly where the people are and you need to locate the folks. I think that solves a lot of issues for you if you have a security there. We know we've taken 3 theft reports in the last probably week and a half there. There will be folks that are trying to get in there, to steal, to look around, to get on the apparatus. The plan right now is if you have motion activation and intrusion by one of your cameras, you're going to have somebody designated to look at that camera and try to identify the nature of that intrusion, and then I guess call us. And then so we'll have a person responding to the forge, not knowing, you know, where that person is in the park, and then try to move from there. Knowing that, you know, right now we're running typically 3 officers on the street. That's going to pull 2 officers to handle that call, and you're competing with Timberline and other calls in that zone of Lamont, and it might not just be as timely as you want. You know, that's just I guess to go into it eyes wide open. I think having a security officer there is the best case scenario for you. So do you want me to just continue on, George? Do you want to talk about each of those things as we go?
No, why don't you go ahead and give an overall summary, and then we'll kind of then we'll take some questions if you could.
The second thing we talked about was a gate access on the north side that would be cleared. Obviously, that's one of the intents to do. I think that helps us. It helps the forge from having a group of folks that would be constantly curious and potentially intruding into that area. I think they still will draw folks from the south side and along the railroad tracks, like Trustee Maher mentioned, but I think that will stop a lot of it. It'll also control that area for them. Once they clear that area and close that gate at night, there will be a lot less potential for intrusion. The no parking signs and tollway signs need to be installed both on the north access road going from Olin and on Main Street as well, just to make sure that folks understand that. And that could be something that we work alongside with Public Works and the Forge to figure out those needs. The fourth item, at some point the village needs to determine an everyday egress route from the Forge, leaving westbound along Talcott there. You know, there's really 3 options: either to improve signalization at Talcott and Main, to push them westbound onto Talcott to Holmes, and then improve signalization at Holmes and Main, or to push them to Stevens Street, which would be probably the least viable solution right now, because that corner is just not large enough for that type of traffic. And then we have to figure out a way to compel folks to go the route that we choose. So those are, I think, are long-term things that need to be decided by the board, and then we need to inform the Forge and talk about how we're going to improve that signalization, and then obviously, you know, evolve as we see that traffic flow and that pattern, how it evolves during the summer. The next item is an easy one. We just asked them to designate a police response location in the Forge, so when they have theft calls or victim calls or a lost child, that we can go and have an area where we can interview a victim as our police respond. And it's typical of what we do in larger places like Timberline, Target, and Kohl's. The camera system, we've already talked to Jeremy about having access to that a web-based camera system. We've listed in our memo where we think cameras should be in the interior and exterior, and they should include parking lots and other points of egress and ingress. That would help either your security guard or your folks do sweeps as well, knowing what's back there before they do the sweep each night. The seventh and eighth item are for events. We had a separate meeting with the Forge folks for hiring back 2 Lamont officers at their 7 or 8 large events that they have each year for security, in addition to their hired event security that they plan to have, and 4 Lima officers for traffic direction and control. And we think traffic egress will be fairly easy in those large events that we could push them right on Telcat into Maine. As long as we don't have trains there, we'll be able to move people out fairly quickly. The last item, it was just an ask that we're trying to organically grow the license plate reader system for the village, and we're asking some of the larger employers to help us build that. That would also help secure their facilities as well. And then we, right now, we don't have anything that's going east out of town on Main Street.
Thanks, Chief. And as you guys are thinking of maybe your questions, we're probably not going to resolve it tonight, but maybe it's a future meeting. Just the traffic flow discussion. Obviously, they're going to be leaving over by Olin. They're going to be heading southwest to Talcott, and I think the traffic study, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, back when the project got approved, as a backup phase to having Walker Road as the main primary entrance. This will be the entrance and exit for at least 3 to 5 years, I would think. Even the best case scenario, Walker Road could take a while. You're looking at everyone exiting on Talcott, and this year we'll have, the good and the bad of COVID, I guess. It's not going to be a heavy year, so we can keep an eye on it. But I think the original plans had everything exiting off of Talcott on the Main Street. There is a bit of an awkward, because you have the tracks and the gates that come down. The Main Street traffic isn't stopping. Just something for us to look at, Chief and Mark and Jason and the board. So we want to put a 4-way or 3-way stop sign there. Where do we want to route traffic? Correct me if I'm wrong, Bart. You guys don't really have a whole lot of input on that. It's really our decision, but just something we have to kind of deal with.
Agreed. We don't have a strong preference one way or another. When I will note that when the traffic experts were studying it, and when the railroad is looking at it, they prefer the exit to go to the signalized entry onto Main Street at Stevens Street. Holmes is not the grade there is bad, and then the curve with the tracks at Talcott is also difficult for the CN. So the traffic experts in the railroad felt that it was safest to take people out Talcott all the way to Stephen. I understand what that means for the traffic flow through that little area there, and we're not married to that idea. We're open to whatever works best for everyone, our patrons and the village. So yeah, you can let us know how you want it, and we'll get signage available. We also felt that exiting, at least during the day, exiting through downtown is not a bad thing, given the downtown businesses, and the restaurants and things like that. So, if somebody's leaving it sometime between 2 and 6, it seems like a reasonable thing to roll out through downtown, and downtown merchants might even like that. After dinner time, maybe easier to just go out onto Talcott, and for our larger events, it may be easier just to go out on Talcott. But we don't have a strong preference, and if the village and the fire and police folks think it should be Talcott, we can live with that.
And Bart, to that point, we've obviously have had many conversations on this with the chief, and I don't think any of the other trustees outside of maybe Dave have been on it. But again, the traffic flow and the queuing and the volume from an exit standpoint, it's not like, maybe a concert, right? It should be sporadic, correct? Is that what
it should be? There should be an evenness to the outflow during the day, with a grouping of it late as we close. There will be people who stay till we're closed. There'll be, that'll be the largest grouping, but generally speaking, it should flow evenly through the day. We pre-book all of our activities. You can only sign up for a very certain slot to run through the course. And so there's a natural flow and progression to somebody coming in, enjoying the activities, grabbing a bite to eat, and exiting. And so we anticipate that flow. And I think, as Byron would tell you, that's how it proves out in other parks that are around the country. including the other ones that he's worked at. There's an evenness. There's a build to a plateau, and then with a little bit of extra at the end.
Anybody else on the traffic flow or anything other public safety related?
Just to go back to the chief's list, I think most of the things we will accommodate. We are going to employ a full-time person, at least for the short term, given the inconsistency of the construction access and the recent thefts. We will be adding, I think Jeanette added today, somebody to provide full-time security, at least during the week, while construction is ongoing. So we have made at least some accommodation there. And I think we hadn't really considered a license plate reader. That's, I don't know the costs or anything else about that. So it's something we'll take under advisement. But the other things, we've discussed, and I think we're in line with most of the things that are on the chief's list.
Yeah, and as we continue to build out our systems too, Chief, I know we talked about other quarries out there that maybe are more passive for the purposes of the forge, but we're going to have more people out there. It would be good to have coverage on the other quarries, where the old boat launch was, and if there's any other areas, Chief, you can think of.
Yeah, that's just a regular camera system. It just might be easier to build out a forge system versus the village system.
Okay.
They seem to have better web access and and cellular connection than what our cameras are.
Okay. I see Janelle, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just. Can you guys hear me? This is the first time talking. My whole thing is, the only thing I don't agree with is that when they have concerts, they're going to obviously have a rush of traffic going in prior to the concert. So are they going to try to maintain some sort of security or there, at least on the beginning and the end?
So the events, the larger events are run with an event company. The event company staffs the traffic and security to a very large extent. There will be, most of these are more festival in nature, not like a headliner act like you would see at the amphitheater in Tinley or something like that. So it won't be, there will be likely more traffic on those days, and folks will stay longer, but there will be a more of a build to the traffic during the day. They won't all come in at once, as you might be envisioning.
Yeah, a key thing to remember is that, the lawn space there where we're building the mount, which is the outdoor amphitheater, it seats 1,000 people in a no COVID world, right? And we've redesigned and are relaying out the entire lawn space there for this season, and probably what ends up becoming 2021 as well, right? Until this thing is licked, like, people aren't going to be in massive groups. It's just not going to be possible. So, we probably can get as many as 250 people on the lawn in a socially distanced and safe way, which means that, number one, we won't be doing any big events because we can't afford to. We'll go bankrupt if we try to do big acts and things. It's just not going to work. So for the foreseeable future, the largest sort of gathering you're going to see out there will be a couple hundred people. And to Bart's point, that a lot of the people that end up going to a festival style event that might be in the evening will come hours beforehand. And so traffic again and volume will build. We will obviously have to work with our staff and our hired staff as it relates to getting people out post an event, right? And that's a concern that we all share, and we'll definitely be part of the solution in that one. The other thing I would say is that for a concert, even in a world in which we have 1,000 people coming out to a show at some point, we'll be able to house most of those cars in the new and existing parking spaces at the north and south sides of the park, and we'll rely on overflow parking opportunities at the Metro parking lot. And we've got a shuttle bus that will be running back and forth that we've purchased, and we'll be using that to help move people around as well. But the concern is 100% understood, and we're trying to think about it as practical as we can, so that as we start doing these events, we'll start them smaller to learn and grow, so that we can then scale into something larger that doesn't come up the works for the village and for us.
Yeah, and our folks will assist with the traffic egress on those larger events. And I guess think of the 3rd of July event at the core and how that's egress, where we would, shut the roads down. Lima would move those people out all fairly quickly.
And Trustee Snagowski, you had a question? Or is that from before? Your hand's up, Rick. Let me see if you're muted, but otherwise.
That's my bad, George. That was mine. My question revolves around the railroad and communication with them as this traffic would need to disperse from an event. Do we have any contact with the railroad to know what their train schedule is, so that we don't run into some kind of traffic snafu crossing the tracks? How real time is that going to be? Or haven't you gone there yet?
Yeah, historically, the times when we're busy on the weekends, it's freight. It's a freight line, and it's an active freight line, and there isn't a fixed schedule. At least that's what we've been told by CN. Obviously, when Metra's running, we know the schedule there. We have a general idea of when Amtrak goes blowing through there, but the freight line is inconsistent. So from what the folks at Olin tell us, the freight trains don't run to interfere with their business, which is encouraging, and so that's what we've been told. But CN doesn't and can't give us a defined timing for when the freight trains run over the weekends.
It would just be a pause to the egress, and we'd have to wait for it to clear.
Yeah. And well, I don't know if there's some kind of indicator that we could get worked with them, when it passes a particular place, where we could at least know it's 10 minutes away or something to that. I don't know how realistic those things are. It would seem to be pretty simple to work out nowadays, but you got to have a want to, and CN is not always the easiest to work with, wanting to do anything to help anybody but themselves.
We have no comment on that remark.
I did.
Yeah, it can be difficult. That's true.
They actually made a 5-minute St. Patrick's Day parade about 15 minutes a couple of years ago, if you remember. So we don't always get updated on the timing. We'll try to reach out, and that's actually a good question on just signage, master signage plans, Jeremy or Bart, because if you're not from Lamont and you get back there, you might think that that's a real train line maybe, and not that it's not a real train, but it's just a spur at Olin, and also the cars that park for fishermen who just parked in the same spot for years. Are you guys going to be getting a master signage plan out? And can we review that, or have the chief of police review it beforehand?
Yeah, the short answer there is yes, we are, and we're working on it now. In fact, last week and this week we have our signage group, if you will, down on site. They were out last Thursday. They're out again this Thursday, reviewing a whole bunch of stuff as we get ready to finalize designs for that for signage, both inside the park and then adjacent to it, abutting and on village property. And so, the chief had recommended, no parking and tow zone signs and things along Talcott and place to help keep people. We're absolutely going to be putting those kinds of signs in, and we're going to be putting more signage along the north side roadway to say, hey, look, you can't be parking here. The other thing that we're going to be doing starting at the end of this week, actually, we're making the stuff now, and we're going to submit it to the village for review and your sign off on it as well, is we're going to do a bit of a flyer campaign, a leaflet campaign. So, and actually we'd love to engage with the village to publish this same thing in the newsletter and on the website and stuff like that for the village. But we're basically we're going to go and remind people of what the village ordinance is. That A, there's no parking on the north side. B, there's no boats in Consumers Court because it's not a village property, nor is it a forage property. It's a privately leased asset that's like no trespassing allowed kind of stuff. And we're going to be reminding people that, it's always been the rule that you're not supposed to be in here after dusk. Going forward, as of a few weeks from now, we're going to be actually enforcing the gate lockage. And so you need to be out of here and those kinds of things. So we can hopefully start to educate or re-educate some of the longtime participants and visitors to that area, so they can understand, like, this is the way it's always been. And we the village, we the Forge, we the township, we the police department, we're not trying to be jerks. We're just like, now it's more essential than ever that we follow our own rules. Because we know that if we went out there overnight and blocked it off, like, that's going to create huge issues, right? So we want to start that communication plan now, and that's incorporated with our signage plan as well, so that people will know, at least we can hope that they can know, right?
Okay, cool, thank you.
How did your sweeps go this weekend?
So for the past several days, we've been sweeping and we haven't had any issues. Last night I was on sweep duty for a big part of the night, and it was an epic experience down there with the flooding. But we haven't had any issues since that incident a couple of, I guess it was last weekend or the beginning of last week or whatever it was.
When you go there after dusk, people are responding to you and complying?
Yeah. And, so Byron took the first wave a few days ago, and when we launched the program, and I think the only time he saw anyone in the park was, 10, 15, something like that. There were a bunch of teenagers hanging out in the parking lot on the north side, just screwing around. And he walked back there and he's like, "Hey guys, you got to go." And he's in his truck, and they all jumped in their cars and said, "Cool," and they left. Okay. And like I said, yesterday was an exception, because the whole area was flooded. I saw one truck brave the north side river when I was down there, but it's been so far so good, and we'll stay there. We're doing that clearing project along the railroad track starting in the next couple of days, and creating a very large natural barrier. I was out there over the weekend, and there's an area on the Forge quarry where people had been jumping off into the quarry there for a long time. And I went and we cleaned the entire area up and removed years worth of garbage and trash that people left there, as well as cut down all the ropes and removed everything. So we'll be putting some signage out there as well that reminds people that this is not a safe activity and it's not approved and these kinds of things. So we'll keep being as active as humanly possible, both before and after we open.
Hey, Jeremy, while it's fresh in our mind, any issues with the flooding, either on your side or on the north side from yesterday? Obviously, it's we get our annual storm of the the century storm.
Yeah.
So any issues?
Yeah, well, so, I would say that nothing major. Last night when I was there, I did not go down the north side road, because there was basically from, as you all know, right, the I&M Canal breached between the village and the quarries, and that whole area last night was a rushing river. And I've got a big truck, and I drove quite a ways down in it, and the water level was up to the base of my engine block, and so I ended up getting out and wading the rest of the way, and I was up to my knees in water on the north side and the south side, all the way up to the gazebo, actually, on the south side. And the water was breached over the canals and pouring into Consumers Quarry for hours last night that I was there, and even into this morning when I went down there, it was still pouring over at 4:45 or 5 a.m. There was a lot of water. But no significant damage at all that was really noticeable anyway. And within this, both on the north side that I could see, and then on the south side where our park is, we're at elevation there, and so we had some pooling around some of the construction areas that we haven't set up the drainage for yet. That is actually happening now, but nothing major. The detention ponds were working and things were draining like they're supposed to into the quarries. We had one area with some standing water that's just, we haven't had a chance to connect the drainage system there and flip that switch. So, but that's nothing major, fortunately.
Hey, Jeremy, I was wondering, the north side, the potholes are, I was on there today as well. The potholes are pretty bad there. And I know you guys are saying you got about 60 days. I'm wondering if there's any way we can do like a light patching on that north side of the road. Even for cars right now, it's really challenging to get down that road.
It's a great question, and I don't know the answer. Jeanette might have an answer immediately, but we've been thinking.
If we have some light fill, perhaps we could at least fill up the holes.
Well,
Yeah, that's what I
gonna
was
say.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about that as part of the work we're about to do to build out that north side parking lot. There's a good chance that we'll need to do some of that anyway, just to ensure we can get all material back there without jeopardizing equipment and such. So it's definitely top of mind because it's pretty rickety back there for sure.
Yeah, and then the mulch had a bunch of blowout spots, so you may want to take a look at that.
I'm sure it did. Yeah, I'm sure.
I know the west of the road is still partly underwater, so.
Yeah, I tell you this, it's total non sequitur. I caught the biggest carp of my life last night. I was down there just with my hands grabbing these just massive, like 6 and 8 pound carp off the sides of the trails. They couldn't get back in the water and, like, tossing them back in. Pretty big fish.
Yeah, John had one today too, I think, right, John?
That's right. Anyone that says the carp can't make it from the Des Plaines River to the Ship and Sanitary Canal, they're wrong. I saw one with my own eyes. In fact, my tire wheel almost went over it. So the Asian carp can make it to the Ship and Sanitary.
No, we don't want to make news here tonight, Mayor. That was not an Asian carp. All right.
Got to get rid of those.
But anyway, why don't we, those are good questions on the maintenance guy. If we can kind of move it along to the parking lot, and then I'll wrap it up here. Because that is one thing we got to kind of move on with. Next week, there's going to be a contract up for approval. If you guys don't mind, the parking lot on Thursday, we're going to try to get this approved so the Forge can keep moving. We put it out for bid, and I'll go through it rather briefly. Talk about some background. I know we have Mike Stillman, our attorney, back on here. He's doing double meetings tonight. Charge it to the school district today, Mike. But anyway, we have I&M Canal North parking lot, and just want to kind of go through. You're going to see this on the agenda. The contract was low bid, was 600 and some odd thousand. We are working with the Forge. Again, this whole agreement for the parking area is essentially the village is working with the Forge to design and bid out and construct a parking lot for the north side that will be paid for by the Forge. So we're obviously working with them to ensure costs are in line with their budget. And I got Ralph Pakula on here. The unique part of this whole agreement is that, and I'll show you some of the areas. If you look at this Cook County viewer, the lines aren't always accurate, but you got a whole multitude of property owners, the township, village. The majority of the parking lot or proposed parking lot is actually on township property. There's small sections that are on village property, but we're all aligned. We want a good lot here, and the Forge needs a lot, obviously, to operate. So we're working together. We just got to find the right way to paper it up. Here is an exhibit for the parking lot area, and just briefly, the area here that's in white circles here is about where the existing parking lot is now. So you'll see that the parking lot is more than doubling in size. I think the total out of the 3 lots, there's going to be 300 or so spots. So the quicker we can get it approved, after Ralph's had and Jim Kankar's had a chance to go through it. We've also been in contact with the township. The township, as I mentioned, owns the majority of the property where this lot resides. So again, we're all aligned. We just need to make sure we paper it up the right way. But the Forge does need to have a contract approved. Hey, Ralph, before I kind of get into the background, I want you, if you get a chance, just to talk about, since we are reducing scope from the lot, if you want to kind of go through real quick and just talk about just your inner workings with Jim Kankar and how you're still comfortable moving forward with the scope reductions.
Sure, George. Yeah, Jeanette, you could jump in as well whenever you'd like. We've had many meetings regarding these lots, and we all want the same thing. We want quality. We want something that's going to last. And the bids came in, and we did work with the Forge to lower the scope. But I feel very comfortable moving forward. We're going to have a quality lot that the Forge is paying the village and village back, and they're going to be responsible for these lots, going forward. So we have a few minor details to work out with Jeanette, and I'm sure there'll be no problem with that. it's the K5 is the contractor. They're willing to work with Jeanette and myself. So Jeanette, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that about takes care of it. A lot of some of the expense was incurred by MWRD. I think volume to acquire the appropriate volumes for the detention. We are actually kind of revising the small lot that's further east. That's where a large expense where they have permeable pavers, and we're kind of putting that on. We're going to grade it and kind of get it into the slot, but we're going to look at other options of detention over there instead of permeable pavers because those are extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Right, and there's other things we removed, as far as CA6 gravel. We're going to use grindings instead, which is perfectly fine. We can compact that stuff just as well as we can gravel. So there are small things that we did, and very comfortable moving forward. And I think Jeanette's happy, and the village will be happy with the product.
Yeah, and that's where it gets into the maintenance side of it. Obviously, the forge, through our license agreement with the forge, we'll be maintaining the lot. But we do have to enter into a 3-party agreement with the township, and working with Steve. I know Steve's on this call is as well, on just ensuring that if you look at the next slide, I'll kind of go through here. There's a whole assortment of property owners in the area. The light blue is MWRD here, where the village has a lease right over, but where the parking lot resides is actually on majority township property. Village owns the property along the reserve strip. So portions of at least 2 of the parking lots are on village property. Just trying to find the right document that ensures that we can bid it out, approve it, pay the bills, get reimbursed by the forge, and then ensure that it's maintained appropriately going forward. And that's I don't know if anybody has anything. If Mike, if you're back on, if you have any comments on how we're going to provide the legal mechanism to do that, or if you think we're good to contract out for it now.
Well, I do think we're okay to contract out for it now. We have a 2009 IGA between the township and the village for the quarry properties. We have a licensing agreement with the forge, and the forge has one as well with the township. So we need to now, in the licensing agreement, it says there will be a 3-party agreement with the township, the village, and the forge. And I should also add in the licensing agreement there. It states that the forge will be paying for the construction of the parking lot. So, and that the village was undertaking it. So everything's there, but as you indicated, George, we now need to just ensure that we have everything tidied up, have the legal document, maybe the 3-party agreement, and we're working with the township to improve the 2009 IGA. I think we're close to that, and we've had some good meetings in that regard, and I think we're ready to have all those done in the next month or so. I know that Bart and I and as well as the township's attorney can probably quickly do that, because we have a good framework of what we need to put in from the licensing agreements.
And just to echo, I agree with what Mike's saying there. It's not, we have the framework of agreements in the license documents. There's some maybe tightening to do on some of the, maybe some specifics that have come up over the last couple of years that we want to address in a more formal way. But I think the outline of it is all there. It says who's supposed to be responsible for what. It says who's supposed to pay for what. And so I think it's in decent shape, and I think Mike's right that we can, with Steve and the attorney for the township, we can finalize this in short order. I would hope.
And yeah, just the reason why the history on the 09 agreement is important. The village, since the township acquired this property in the 2000s, has taken liability and maintenance responsibilities and police protection responsibilities for essentially the entire area, because the village has lease rights over MWRD property. through IGA has liability, rights and obligations and maintenance on the township property along with the village's own property. The village also owns this large 7-acre triangle here. So because there's so many entities involved, having it under one roof for the last 10 years has worked out. Now with the Forge involved, we just need to be able to find the mechanism to transfer all that to the Forge so the residents of Lamont Village and Township are protected in that way.
Just to piggyback on that, I think he's indicated already, George, but since 2009, the village has maintained the quarry property. In fact, the village granted 4 acres over to the township in order for the township to get to the legal requirement to obtain the land that we're talking about, where the parking is going to be. So really, the agreement is just going to kind of build upon that. And what we want to do is ensure all contingencies. If between the village and the township, we have a third party that we expect to succeed, but we also always, lawyers are what if, so we have to make sure that we have everything there to ensure that it's spelled out between the township and the village. If there's a change in ownership with the Forge, or if the Forge it will not be in existence, we don't believe that, but part of our nature. So we have to do what ifs. So those are why we're just finalizing the final parts of all the agreements, and also why it's essential that we the township and the village continue to know what the responsibilities of both are.
Thanks, Mike. And another just the 3-party agreement that'll come up here in the next couple board meetings. We still have some work to do on it. It should be somewhat simple, right, Mike? I mean, the goal of everyone here is not to charge for parking. At least to start. We want to prevent against residents going back there to fish and who aren't using the park also to have parking. So I think that there's there's enough parking back there, and with utilizing satellite lots if needed, that there'll be more than enough parking for everybody. And as long as the lots are getting maintained by the Forge, I think we're all good on our end.
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap it up. So it's Steve, I'm sorry I didn't see you out there, buddy. Steve Rosendahl, again, appreciate working with the township on this. The tri-party agreement that we're alluding to will spell out some of the more details, right, Bart, that was not in the original agreement. We'll work together on that, anything from timing to, the trails to the maintenance, that sort of thing, deliverables. We'll fine tune that on the tri-party agreement, correct?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think what we always envisioned, that if there were to ever be charged parking, which is still, you never know. So just like you guys want to have contingencies for what happens if we're not around, we want to have contingencies for what happens if there's charged parking. So we need that to be more formalized. And then we want to get specific on maintenance obligations, maybe level of maintenance, all the kinds of things that we've already said we're going to do, but just to put it in writing to make everybody feel good that it is what it's supposed to be, and it is what we've always been saying, and it is what we've agreed to.
And just to piggyback off that, so obviously the township owns land there. They need input and have to have sign off. Dave Maher, Trustee Maher, has been working with the H Corps, as you well know. But for everyone else on this call, the H Corps represents another voice. They're big users of this area. So Dave, appreciate you taking the lead and voicing their concerns as well. And again, this is the agreement that we have to nail some of this down and get some details to it. So I think we're all on the same page. So George, anything else? Is that it for the Forge project? Does any other trustees have any questions or comments?
the only thing before we do that is just, yeah, we're almost done. I know we have another agenda tonight, but just, you mentioned the maintenance, whether it's the three-party agreement or a different agreement, just talking to Ralph and just wanting to eliminate as many ambiguities as possible with maintenance, the trail systems, the road. We talked about the road at length here today. What does maintenance mean? I guess from, after July 1st or whenever the park opens, if there are issues with maintenance of trails, is there, what is the process? Does that go right to the forge? Do we contact the forge? Just these things we need to work out. I'll leave it up to the mayor if you have any other questions, or trustee Maher, but just want to clarify anything we can so there's no ambiguities.
Yeah, I think what we just mentioned there, and Dave, I'll let you comment, but yeah, I think, this is where we talk more details of, deliverables and timing. I'll kind of leave it at that. Dave, do you have anything else to add or share?
No, I agree with the list that we have here that we have to go through. The trail accommodations, that's the proposed trails as well that we have out there, and how we're going to get them installed, when we're going to get them installed, what's the maintenance look like in general on the north side, because that is not something from the parking lots through to the trail systems that we haven't really talked about at all. So I do think those are outstanding for us.
Okay, great. And obviously we'll hear from, Steve and his side regarding, it is a tri-party. It's us, the forge, as well as the township. So, again, we'll all work as a group to get that done.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining, Steve. You're looking good.
Hey, I've been here. It's interesting listening.
All right.
Anything else other than I kind of anticipated some of the things that came out of the meeting, obviously the additional security measures, the cameras, and we'll finalize that. But if there's additional other projects we need to discuss, the one thing, before maybe it close up, is one thing we're still trying to work towards a solution on Walker Road. We had a good meeting the other day. Not to put words in your guys' mouth, but you guys still, obviously would prefer Walker Road to be an entrance to your park, whether that happens 3 to 5 years from now after IDOT's completed. We're gonna have a water line out there. We think we can secure funding from various sources for the railroad crossing. There's gonna be some costs associated with engineering, and in local matches. From our standpoint, we want to continue forward, but we want to hear from the forge as well. If that's a project you want to continue to pursue, not just for phase 2, but just for more parking for phase 1.
Again, I'll just say what I said the last time, is that it's better for us to have the entry on Walker if the crossing is funded, and we've never been adverse to paying our fair share of anything, as has been proven on several occasions. The crossing would benefit West Side as well. But we're obviously open to the idea and would prefer that to be our front door, but not necessarily when it's an IDOT construction zone.
Okay. Anything else, Mayor or Dave or anybody else? I'll kind of wrap up.
No, I think that's it. And again, hey, we're, as we get into the details, there's, a lot of, back and forth. Again, overall, let's take a step back. We're very excited about this project, gang. We think it's exciting for the village. We think, the village can slingshot off of the forge, continue to add recreation, be a recreation destination, tie into the downtown, drive business, for our local, mom and pop shops and restaurants. So again, we think, this is a great avenue. We have some great natural resources. Again, we don't have, the resources to develop these. So again, we think this is a great project and we're very excited. And again, we wish you guys nothing but the best. Obviously, we continue to work together. We continue to work with the township. And, again, just want to reiterate, we're very excited and looking forward to, down the road and to the opening.
Thanks a lot for those well wishes, and we're super excited to get things going and get them opened and have guests play on those nice towers that we've built.
Yeah, we really appreciate the partnership. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, Drew.
Hey, John, I'll be right behind you on the first zip line.
I want both of you guys to be two of the first people down side by side. We have 4 big long zips, and you can hold hands all the way down. It's fun to
6
watch.
feet apart, right? There you go.
Yeah, they
Just
are.
give me a parachute. Now, looking forward to it, guys. Appreciate it. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Okay, let's move on. I think next up is our fence variation on Kettering. Who's taking the lead on that?
I will. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
You guys hear me?
We got you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. So this item, I'll just kind of real quickly go through it. The applicant is Chris Booth. He's the property owner. The property located 13691 Kettering, which is highlighted there on the aerial image there. The request is to allow for a 5-foot open fence, where the regulations right now would only allow for a 4-foot fence. In particular, the applicant is making the request as he desires to install a pool in the near future, maybe next year or the year after. And building code would require a 5-foot barrier, in addition to currently having a large dog that a 4-foot fence would not provide a lot of security. You go to the next slide, George.
Yep.
Thank you. The regulations, just kind of here are our decorative fence and wall regulations. These are the regulations which allow, and on a corner lot, that image in the bottom left corner shows where kind of a traditional fence would be allowed to go, where it cannot extend in the corner yard any closer to the street than the corner setback line. However, there's an exception, and that's what the text on the top of the screen is, and that's for quote unquote decorative fences and walls. They are permitted in the corner, so long as the fence does not exceed 4 feet, is 20 feet from the edge of a street, and is open in design. So again, the proposed fence hits all of those criteria except for it's 5 feet in height. George, next slide, please. Thank you. And then just kind of just summarizes these regulations again, but overlaid over the applicant's property. So the dark blue line, hopefully you can see it, that is again their traditional fence regulations. Per our code, that would be, you know, a 6-foot solid wood privacy fence could go where that blue line is. The yellow line is the decorative fencing, as I noted, which per code, 4 feet in height maximum, 20 feet or more from the edge of a street, and again, open in design. And then in the red, I have what the applicant is proposing, which would be one of those decorative fences, but just 5 feet in height. Next slide, George. So one thing to note related to this request is that many other municipalities, not all, but many, when it comes to fences, make a distinction between what you would consider a back-to-back corner yard residential lot type as opposed to a reversed corner type. The difference there being a back-to-back corner one shares a rear property line with another back-to-back corner yard, and therefore their corners, for lack of a better term, are adjacent to each other, as opposed to, as you can see in the bottom of the image, a reverse corner lot where somebody's corner yard is next to somebody else's front yard. So that's the distinction. So again, many communities do make an exception to allow a little bit more wiggle room or some more leniency, for lack of a better term, with the back-to-back corner lot types. Our code does not make that distinction. Next slide, George. So again, this is just what the applicant has submitted. Again, showing the bottom left there, you can see a picture of the proposed fence type, which would be an open aluminum fence. This is the type of fencing that that their HOA requires. Our code, again, could allow for a wood privacy fence, but their HOA regulations do not allow for that. So again, in red is where the applicant is proposing to have the fence. It should be noted that the applicant has been in touch with the homeowners association, which is still MI Homes controlling the HOA at the moment, but they have not expressed any concerns or problems with the proposed request. Next slide, George. Thank you. So just in conclusion, staff's making a positive recommendation on the request. It's not detrimental to the adjacent property. It doesn't alter the essential character of the neighborhood. There are some mitigating factors due to the kind of curvilinear street pattern in Kettering Estates, which creates a number of irregularly shaped corner lots, such as the subject lot. Again, this is one of those back-to-back corner lots, not a reverse corner lot. There would be no safety concerns due to it being an open fence and still being a certain distance off of the street. Staff has a couple of conditions which are more or less general. The item went before the Planning and Zoning Commission at a public hearing on May 6th, where it had a unanimous positive recommendation to approve. Be happy. I don't believe the applicant is on our Zoom here. Not sure if he was earlier or not, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Mark. So it sounds like the applicant is not on. Is that correct?
I don't believe so. I didn't see his name on the list right now.
All right. With that being said, are they going to abide by all the staff recommendations?
Oh, yes, definitely. That was made clear at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. They have no concern with those recommendations at all.
All right. So it's good to hear that the HOA is all on board as well. Do any of the other trustees have any issues with this or comments?
None for me, John.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Mark, thanks for the thorough update. That's great. Appreciate it. Any other trustees? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut anyone else off there. We good? Okay, don't hear anyone. So, okay. Thanks, Mark. Again, appreciate that. So let's move on for the sake of time. Covington Knowles, please.
Sure, I'll take this one as well. This is Covington Knowles Unit 8. The applicant is Gallagher and Henry doing business as Farmingdale Development. The property is on the northeast corner of 127th Street and Covington Drive. The proposed request is for final PUD, which would allow for the construction of 26 single-family detached units. Next slide, please, George.
Hold on one second for me here.
Jason's in charge.
we're trying something new.
There it is. I got it, Jason. It's okay.
Well, just real quick.
I'll grab it back, Jason. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, just real quick while you guys are working on that, I'll just a little bit of background. The entire Covington Knowles development was approved as a plan unit development way back in 1994. Covington Knowles, here we go. Unit 8, the preliminary plan unit development was approved last August. And again, you can see here, this is the final plat that they submitted, which is under review. does have the 26 single-family detached units as was approved in the preliminary plat. Next slide, please. The preliminary PUD approval does have a number of general conditions and specific conditions called out for. And as you can see, they're complying with all of these items. They've submitted all the required plans. They are under review and may even be approved. I was discussing this with the applicant actually earlier this afternoon. And then again, that relates to the specific conditions where outstanding items from the consulting planner, arborist, engineer, et cetera. You know, those items are under review and are almost complete. They provided the signed agreement with the park district. They've called out certain lots as being garage left or garage right for safety reasons, and again they'll comply with, you know, the development standards, the appearance standards from the Covington Knolls PUD going back to 1994. The no access easement along the lots there, that's actually an item, you know, they completed it and that it's not required because they do have some little outlots that the village would be taking, which would prevent any access on the Covington Drive. So it's sort of a moot point. So they're making progress in or have complied with all of these conditions. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, the preliminary plat versus the final plat, you know, it's hard to tell a difference because it substantially conforms. The final plat substantially conforms with the approved preliminary plat, which is our standard of review for a final PUD and a final plat. Just real quick, I just want to show you, next slide, please, George, is the landscape plan. Just I have it here in case there are any questions about it. But you can see they're putting in landscaping on the proposed new street, Bainbridge Court, in addition to landscaping on 127th Street, the Parkway landscaping, and you'll have some landscaping there as kind of a buffer to 127th. Next slide, please. In addition, they did provide these are some floor plans with some elevations for some of the proposed units that they have provided. Again, they're not going to be held to necessarily build this product, but this is what they intend to build. Next slide, please, George. The next slide here, you can see here's some additional options. They do have to comply with that 1994 Covington Knolls PUD, which does have appearance standards in them. They will have to comply with those. So next slide, which just has a couple more options here. You can see again the type of product that they're looking to build. And then thanks, George, last slide here. So staff recommends approval that the of this request, that the final PUD and plat does substantially conform with the approved preliminary PUD and the approved preliminary plat. Again, they just need to address any outstanding items, which they're working on. This item was also on our May 6th Planning and Zoning meeting, where it received a unanimous positive recommendation of approval. Do believe the petitioners are here for this item. So if there's any questions, whether it's myself or they can answer those questions.
I was on mute there. I have one question. Obviously, the world's changed over the last 3 months. For the petitioners, any any comment on timing?
This is John Gallagher. We're just playing it by ear and seeing what happens. We're hoping to get started this summer, but we'll see what happens.
Any other comments or issues by the other trustees?
No questions for me, Mayor.
None here.
Okay.
None here, Mayor.
Okay, sounds like we're all good, right? All right, well, thank you, again, Gallagher and Henry, appreciate it. And good luck. Obviously, things have changed a little bit, but we'd love for you to break ground this year. But like I said, good luck. So with that being said, moving on next to Notting Hill.
Yes, again, I'll take this item. This is another final PUD request for final PUD and plat. The applicant is Matthew Dill with Teton Development. The location is property that is addressed at 15411 West 129th Street. As you can see on the map there, it's on 129th, just east of State Street. The property has R5 single family attached zoning, and the request is for a final PUD to allow for the development of a 43 unit attached single family townhome residential development. Next slide, please. So with this item, the original preliminary PUD approval dated back to 2007, but that approval had been extended on a annual basis. The village recently in February had approved a major modification to that preliminary PUD. This was to allow for, styles changed over the subsequent years. So a slightly different building layout resulted in some slight modifications where setbacks were altered a little bit. In addition, the applicant is connecting on the northwest there. You can see to St. Andrew's Court to allow for access there. And as a result, the original approval from 2007 had 45 units. This request and what had been approved in February is for only 43 units. Next slide, please. So again, this is just a comparison of the preliminary PUD plat plan with the final PUD plat. And again, it substantially conforms, same number of lots, lot sizes, etc. Next slide, please. Again, there are conditions of approval in the major change ordinance that was approved in February. The applicant is working on this as well. Plans are under review. One item that kind of holds things up is the annexation plat had never been recorded. We have it now. It's just now we can't record it because the county recorder's office has been closed due to COVID-19. So that's something that we're obviously just working on. One kind of minor note is you'll see in the plans that I have in the next few slides, the final plans that we received don't show a sidewalk on the north side of 129th. That's something staff, it's in the major change. You can see here, yeah, there's no sidewalk there, but that's something that was approved, and they'll be putting that sidewalk in on north of 129th. So this is the geometric plan from the engineering plans, just again showing the site layout. One thing, and the applicant, if there's further questions on this, we can talk about it more, but they're showing the hammerhead down there. So we're not accessing 129th, but they do have the hammerhead down there to allow for vehicular movement. That may need to be modified, slightly larger or some other mechanism, grasscrete or something, put in place there just to allow for better circulation for fire trucks or for snow plows. So that's something that before this comes for formal approval, we're working with the fire district and the village engineer on that. Next slide, please. And this is just a grading plan showing, the stormwater and other grading aspects. Next slide, please. Landscape plan. Again, if there's any questions on the landscaping, but again, they're putting in the required parkway trees, and you can see how there's going to be some buffer there to the south, actually, off of 129th as well. Next slide. And these are just the renderings. These were, submitted with the major change a few months ago. There hasn't been any change, but these kind of show the type of product that are to be developed on the site. And then in conclusion, staff does find that this final PUD and plat does substantially conform with the approved preliminary plat as modified in the major change recently. Some outstanding items still need to be addressed, but they'll be addressed as we move forward and before formal approval. Again, this item was on the May 6th Planning and Zoning meeting with a unanimous positive recommendation for approval. believe the developer and is here as well. And again, if there's any questions for me, I can answer or they can answer.
Great. Thanks, Mark. As far as the conditions, I believe, Ed, you're on, Ed Mansell. Ed, any issues? Are you going to stick with the conditions or recommendations?
And Pete Coulis has his hand up, the attorney for the project.
Yeah, go ahead, Pete. You're on mute.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Pete Coulis here. Thanks, John. Ed's taken over doing everything, as you guys know, when we first went back in front of you. Teton is the contract purchaser. If they do not buy the property, Ed's going to build exactly what is shown here. All conditions are acceptable. 129th Street sidewalk is like having a child, because I've asked the engineer to put it on since February, and I can't get them to draw it on the drawing. So everyone has full intention. There's going to be a sidewalk on 129th Street. All the other conditions are fine. The question became, what there's already the right of way dedicated if 129th Street's ever settled up. Mark and George have been great trying to work out what we're going to do with the opening by 129th Street for getting the fire district and the plow trucks happy. We want to make sure Ralph's guys can get in and out of there easily and turn around, because right now, I don't know how they do it, but fire trucks go down 129th Street. Yeah, it's pretty tenuous when they get down about to the end of the property line, but they do go down there now. So there's no problem at all working out those three conditions.
Awesome.
And if the buyer doesn't buy it, Matt Dill, Ed's going to build this, and the idea is whoever does do this is going to start in the summer.
Awesome. Good to hear. Good to hear.
Hey, sorry, I have
Go
a
ahead.
question then. Pete, just off of what you just said, is there something, since it's not going to be in the documentation that we have here that we're approving, because I think this is going to go next week, right? Are we approving this next week?
I'm not sure if we'll be on the agenda for next week. Again, we still need to get the formal approvals from some of the consultants as well. So next week might be a little ambitious, but
I thought it would be on the second. I thought it would be on the first meeting in June, Dave.
yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're targeting. Yeah.
Okay, and then, so those things would be in the stuff that's submitted, or are we just going to have a footnote that says, like the sidewalk, that the sidewalk's going to be there?
No, the sidewalk should be on the approved plans.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Good.
We're all in
Thanks.
agreement on that, Dave.
Okay. Yeah, just didn't know if you were. Yeah, I didn't know how that was going. So okay, cool.
And I don't
Thanks.
want to ever be on another meeting behind the forge.
No, nobody does. we could probably find another topic that's long.
So if they're on the next meeting, I don't want to be on it. But if they're on the first one in June, please put me on next week.
Hey, Pete, the good news is it makes these other things go fast.
I know that. I agree, John. I'm laughing.
Any other issues or comments by the trustees?
I have none.
Okay.
Nope.
Well, Ed, Pete, good luck, and good to hear about the timing. Hopefully, obviously we all know Matt's kicking butt down there off 131st, and so like I said, good luck, and time to move on. So with that being
Thank you,
said,
John.
appreciate it. Next up, the McCarthy Road, McCarthy Road sewer connection. Who's taking the lead on that?
Take this one as well, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So this request, properties located at 13389 McCarthy Road. The applicant is Mr. Stupski, is present on this Zoom, I believe. So the property is currently zoned R4 single family detached. It's about 2 acres in size. The request is simply to allow one single family detached dwelling to be constructed, but to allow for a septic system, a private septic system, as opposed to connecting or extending the village sanitary system. Next slide. A little bit of background: the property was annexed in 2008 as part of a proposed 4 single family detached lot development, as you can see here on the screen on the plans. So the village had approved a number of ordinances associated with the request, annexing it, annexation agreement, preliminary PUD, the R4 zoning, and then subsequently in 2009 did grant a time extension. However, that has expired in the 11 years since then. Next slide, please. So kind of the main point of having this on the committee of the whole meeting tonight is that the applicant has requested that annexation agreement, which was approved in 2008, be rescinded, primarily because much of the annexation agreement, including the attached exhibits, speak to a multi-lot residential development. So the strict reading of the annexation agreement is that you can't build anything there unless it's this 4-lot development, which is not what the applicant wishes to do. Again, just wishes to build a single family home. There's a lot on the screen, I know, but there are some other items in that annexation agreement that we may still need to see. Some of this, like with a wetland determination letter, may be required by IEPA or the Army Corps anyways. But right now, the property line is to the center line of McCarthy Road. Do we want that dedicated? Should there be a water main easement put in place? Don't believe any annexation fees were paid because the annexation agreement said that those fees would be paid at time of final PUD submittal, which had never happened. There are some architectural standards listed in that annexation agreement. Of course, the village does have single family architectural standards. Some of these, including a minimum size for the home, not allowing above ground pools and certain type of fencing or sheds may not be in the, ideal for just a single family home on this site. So again, kind of just putting this item before you guys here today for discussion in terms of this annexation agreement. We had forwarded to the village attorney to take a look at, and he had seen it previously as well. Here's just kind of an overview of the applicant's current request. Again, you can see the property. The north, east, and south is all payless. Not extending the sanitary main is not the end of the world because it really couldn't be extended any further anyways. Next slide. So we'll have this item on our June 3rd planning and zoning meeting to discuss specifically the septic system variation. We thought we'd bring it to you tonight, just kind of in interest of timing. We had the submittal not quite in time to get to the May planning and zoning meeting, but certainly with enough time to bring it to you guys here tonight. So we just kind of wanted to help kind of expedite the process here to discuss this item here and get some direction from you as the village board regarding this annexation agreement in terms of, should we just rescind it as per the applicant's request, or does it need to be, just amended and modified to allow for the single family home to be developed?
Mark, my first question is, so right now they are not, the applicant is not in the village, correct?
No, they are in the village. This has been annexed. It's been recorded.
Okay.
It is annexed, yes.
So if we revoke the annexation agreement, how do they go into unincorporated and then, or is it do they stay in the village?
No, I believe you'd just be revoking the agreement, but the annexation's still in place. It's just all of the strings attached to the annexation would go away, for lack of a better term.
And they
Yeah,
could, they could disconnect them in theory, right? Or that's a legal question, but.
Yeah, my understanding is without Mike, if you want to chime in.
There's certain requirements for annexation that are for disconnect, and we would need to address those and get verification. But we're very familiar with disconnect lawsuits, right? So we know what needs to be done. But I don't want to give an opinion yet on that because I don't have all the information at this time.
And we do have a resident that's nearby that Pete actually lives nearby, and he has his hands up. And Rick Snagowski. I can't unmute him though.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, my understanding. So I know Christian. Hi, Christian. Thanks for joining us. So, Christian, are you going to stay within the village, and are you willing to sign an agreement to stay in the village?
Hey, good evening, Mayor. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. My intention is to stay within the village of Lamont. I just want to, either rescind or amend this agreement for a single-family home for one residence. Because right now, as you know, it's for a 4-home subdivision. So yes, my intention is to stay in the village of Lamont. I don't intend to disconnect whatsoever.
Okay, that was my question. So go ahead. And Mike,
Yeah,
I guess what we need to be able to
that
do is
helps.
trying to, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that helps. And also, thank you, Mayor. The question I had is what type of zoning for Mark and for the applicant are they going to be seeking? Do they want to be R1 or what's the zoning that they're going to need, Mark?
Yeah, well, that's another complicated question. So, our zoning maps that, the village has published on an annual basis still show it as R4, which is more than enough to allow the development. The minimum lot size in the R4 is 12,500 square feet, for example. This property is roughly 2 acres, right? The annexation agreement does have some language in there about, possibly reverting the zoning back to R1, if that previous development had not occurred.
Correct.
Zoning maps have not reflected that for the past 11 years plus though, however. So I don't know legally if there's any issues with that, but regardless, in R1 zoning, has a minimum lot size of, I forgot it's in square footage, and it's not quite 3 acres, but it's essentially 3 acres, more or less. This property is smaller than that, but nonetheless should work with the setbacks in the R1 district. Again, we don't have a detailed site plan or anything to confirm that, so the short answer is, either the R1 or the R4 works, or we had not put any sort of notice out with the variation request to rezone it to some other zoning district, whether it be maybe the R2 or the R3. So in short, any type of single family zoning would work. We could just convert it back to the R1 and it may work.
Because Trustee Snagowski made us aware that there was a
yes,
there was a resolution passed in 2009 referring to what you said, that it would be, I'm looking at it right now, that it would revert to R1 after April 27, 2011. So there's been a formal action of the board saying that, and I understand your concern that while that's been done, the map's never reflected that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll look into that. But looking at it now, I think that that obviously we have a resolution that states that if further action is not done, it reverts to R1. So we might have everything solved, where all we would need to do then is rescind the remainder of the annexation agreement, but the reverting the property R1 and that annexation agreement and the PUD will continue to be in existence. So I think we're pretty close, and we might not need to do much to it.
Thanks, Mike.
Do we
Christian,
modify the agreement rather than rescind it?
Yeah, that's what I'm sorry. We could rescind, modify. Yeah, how we do it. That's a good point, trustee. So I think we just want to modify it. We'll rescind certain parts of it, but the whole document will be modified in general. That's a good point.
Mike, this is Rick. My point was just to show that language that it did revert back to R1, which is our default when we bring in a property from unincorporated into the village. So
correct.
We bring it in as an R1, and to Mark's point, it really doesn't qualify even as R1, but that is our default. So we probably should look at what maybe we need to come up with some other zoning criteria so that if we bring in a parcel that is less than 3 acres, but greater than our R4 standard 12.5, then we should have something that actually works. Right now we don't. It comes in as an R1, but in theory, there's not enough acreage to qualify for it, but that is our default for unincorporated property.
And we could actually, we could look into that, and that could be part of the modification too.
My
that's a good
only
point.
concern, and the landowner did say tonight he wants to stay in Lamont. I just don't want to lose the property being in Lamont for potentially future discussion with the Payless properties there. So I guess as long as the property, from my perspective, as long as the property owner is agreeable to the recommendations that the staff has made, you know, I'm all right with it. And I thought maybe we didn't have to go so far as to rescind anything because we, by our language, we default back to R1.
I think you're right, and we'll rather than rescinding, we'll modify it. So, Mark, I can get together with you if it's not until June 3rd in front of the PZZ. We can talk about that. But as long as the landowner still on?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you understand, sir? We'll get together with you. It might have already gone to R1, so we might not have to rescind it. We might just need to modify it.
Yeah, that's fine with me too. You know, if you guys would prefer to modify it, there's just a lot of context in that old agreement that no longer is applicable. You know what I mean? There are detention and volume control facilities.
Right. And Christian, that was my point, is because our language is such in 09 that if action wasn't taken, it reverted back to R1. I don't know that any of that applies anymore. And that's exactly the point that we need to have our attorney look at.
And my belief is it doesn't, but I think the best thing for us to do is to get together with Mark and the applicant and ensure that it will not.
Okay, do you have any problem with the requirements that the staff has talked about, Christian? For example, a water main easement along 127th Street? Actually, it's 123rd right there, I believe.
23rd.
Yeah.
You know, based on my previous meetings with the village engineer, I'm aware that I will need to connect to the water main. So yes. I am aware of that. I was maybe looking for an opportunity to shoot that water main in between the Dan Stevens and Laura Heinz's property. There's a utility easement. But you know, that might be a conversation for another day, because I know that Dan Stevens, he would prefer for me to also go through that backyard easement rather than the front yard, because I know he has trees there that he doesn't want me to disturb. But
right. I'm not particularly talking about how you connect. I'm talking about providing the village an easement along 127th.
McCarthy.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, are you talking about like the 50-foot
I mean,
right-of-way?
I said 127.
Correct.
I'm talking about McCarthy 123rd.
Yeah, I'm aware that you know that the 50-foot easement along McCarthy, you know, will have to be taking place.
Yeah, it's both the dedication of the right of way and then to that, assuming the water main does go along McCarthy, that you would have to dedicate an easement as well for the water main.
Yeah, I understand.
And well, I mean, well, as we move along, I guess it'll be further reviewed by the village.
Yeah, Mark, didn't you say that Christian actually owns to the center line?
Yeah, that's how all the documents right now.
Right.
So part of the, you know, the old proposal as well was to dedicate for McCarthy, but again, that final plat was never submitted, so there never dedication.
Right. So that's one of those details that we want to talk about. Okay.
Hey, Mayor, Ron's got his hand up, and also Pete Coolis lives, I think, right next to the property. So just to let you know if you want to go to one of them.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, John. Hey, Christian, how you doing? I just saw that this was on the agenda tonight and what he was asking for, and why I had some time when you were doing the forge. I reached out to 2 of the 3 people. 4 of us abut his property, John, and 3 people have no problem if it's easier for Christian to put in a septic field if the village will approve that, because to come and hook up to the sewer, he's got to dig up 2 people's backyards and go down someone's driveway. It's going to be a great expense to him and a lot of disruption of people's driveways and planting beds and the like. So the 3 of the 4 neighbors, not that the other one said no, I only could get a hold of 3 of the 4 while we're doing this, and they would all support him 100% if he wants to put a septic field in.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
Yeah, because
Ron-
he's got to come to the center of our cul-de-sac, John. You know where I'm at. He's got to come right through those 2 yards all the way out and down one person's driveway.
Got it. Got it. Okay, great.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ron.
The last owner came or said that couldn't get the water because Jumpsec had some control over that line, and he refused to let him hook up. Is that still the case?
That's never been a true statement, Ron.
Oh, okay.
The sewer, though, I think, not the water.
There was another way they were trying to get to the sewer, and they can't go the other way, Ron. That's why he's got to come back through the yards.
So he can get the water?
Water's right there.
Okay.
You can auger to the water. And to Christian's point, it's less disruptive of people's trees to go along the back of their yards versus going along the front of McCarthy Road. That's what he was stating. Both of them are about the same distance run for him.
Okay, now I understand.
Thanks, Ron. Any other questions or issues or comments on this?
None for me, Mr. Mayor.
And I have no problem with that. Well, with a septic field, he's got a huge lot back there.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, let's clarify that. Is everyone good with Christian hooking up, staying in Lamont, hooking up the water and putting in a septic instead of sewer?
Stapleton's for it.
Kittredge is for it.
Quaz is for it.
All right, sounds
Maher's
like
fine with it.
Okay, cool. Well, Christian, hey, good luck. Any, you know, I always got to ask on timing. What's your calendar look like?
Well, I'm hoping to maybe bring the water in later this fall and then break ground on the house, you know, hopefully early next year. But I want to resolve the water extension first. That's the first thing on my agenda. After this, you know, septic variance, then I'm gonna get to the water. And, you know, I'm in the process of designing the home already in the site. So, you know, one thing at a time, but hopefully early next year, we get going on the house.
Christian, is this for your family or is this?
Yeah, for me and my wife, correct.
Awesome. Where do you live now?
In the city, downtown.
Okay. All right. Well, Christian, we're looking forward to you joining us here in Lamont and appreciate you looking to invest. So
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm originally from Lamont too, so we're going back home, I guess.
There you go. There you go. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Thanks for hanging in there. All right. With that being said, next up, any unfinished or new business we need to talk about before we get into audience participation? Trustees, anything? Going once, twice?
Nothing for me.
Okay. All right. Next up, audience participation. George, do you want to take the lead on this? I think you said no one submitted anything, at least online wise. Is that correct?
Correct. Nothing through email. Now's the opportunity. If you have anything else to address, please raise your hand and you can speak. Let me see. I don't see anybody. Nope. All right, good. You're good to go.
Okay. So executive session, how do we work this?
Well, I think what we'll do after you ask for a motion, or I guess, you know, cite the applicable 2C11 would be the pending litigation. I think what I'll do is everyone should leave the room, and if you don't, I can move you to the waiting room and add you back in later when we open back up. So everybody other than the board and Mike Stillman should leave. That's how we'll do it. And I'll stop the stream from YouTube and stop the recording, then restart it.
So before I exit here, well, let me make it official. I mean, it's on the agenda. So we're going to executive session discussion under Chapter 5 ILCS 120. Is that
Correct. Yep. 2C11.
Okay. 2C11. Okay. So what are we going to do? Are you going to keep us on or are you going to kick us off and then we got to get back on?
You guys could stay, but everyone else I will kick off. So.
Okay, great. All right. So with that being said,
Hold on just a second. I get a chat here. Oh, Steve is going to leave. There's really no, you should make it no, there's no action. Obviously, there's no action at this meeting.
yeah,
anyway.
no action. Yeah.
There's no reason for anyone to hang around afterward, but so yeah, there's no action afterward.
Okay. So with that being said, need a motion to adjourn, or do we need a motion? I guess we.
So I'll move McClafferty.
All right. Let's make it
Second,
official. All
and I'll
right.
make a motion to move into executive session.
That's what you
You need that.
All in
That's the
favor?
one. And we'll adjourn after it.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, we will move into executive session.